At 18, I consider myself tentatively lucky to still have a great-grandparent. 91, and only now just starting to disappear behind a thicket of dementia. My mother's mother's mother is held in my family, much like a beautiful antique platter we once had treasured, requires the most careful of handling, only seen at Christmas. Not like it was always like this. Ma, as we 7 youngest group of descendants call her, she used to be, well, here. Aged, yes, but she refused to let anybody be able to call her an old lady. I spent elementary summers in quiet awe of how much she was able to do at her age, on her own, while the 4 of us I'd known went so quietly into the ground that I can hardly even recall that they were once more than just a figure in the frames on the wall. Far too many errands ran, and dinners cooked, and nights spent to really pick apart the specific memories of more before now. And I was too young to be able to get anything but the essence of things from then. The accumulation of time stretches out like a landscape, blurred and somewhat constant, peppered by the rare oddity or importance. But there is one. I can't remember specifically how old I was, but it would have been when I was still young enough and small enough to be comfortably sleeping on Ma's love seat in her living room, an overstuffed structure held together by cool, plasticky leather. I usually would find myself up with the sun almost directly following saying goodnight. For some reason, on some night, I had been pulled back from consciousness by a very loud, chug-a-lug type of sound. I do remember keeping my eyes closed for a long time. I figured I'd fall back asleep if I mind like I'm actually asleep. Eventually, the noise became piercing. All around, far too much to ignore. I sat up. Pushed up against the wall and the other end of the couch was a large, matching chair. It usually sat vacant, but not then. I had opened my eyes to a man sitting there, pants and shoes, and an old man belly visible through a tan shirt. And he didn't seem one bit out of place with the scene. The prickle of fear that I'd had nowadays went unfelt then. I was not scared. In my child mind, he looked even natural to be there. Most of his face was covered by a grey opaque mask that stretched from nearly over his eyes to past his chin. We stayed like that for a while. Even in the dark, I could see well enough to make out the struggle in the rise and fall of his chest as he took in air. My mind was so unbothered by the presence of the man with no face that I could even conjure up sympathy for him. An asthmatic since kindergarten, I knew what it was like to not be able to take a simple function for granted. I can remember most sharply how bad I felt that this stranger had to live with that loud mask. But I never said a word or made a motion, and neither did he. I blinked at him. I think he blinked at me. Then, for some time, I squirmed back down onto the couch and fell asleep. In the daylight, eating pancakes with my brother and Ma, and waiting for my mother to come take us all to the movies, the incident felt like nothing more than a really silly dream. I knew how my brothers and cousins would laugh. Ha ha ha, a man in the chair, and ha ha ha, he had a mask. The adults would say I was making things up again. I'd get another lesson in truths versus not truths, and I already knew well enough. So I had a secret. I once saw a man in Ma's chair, and I was almost proud to have never even whispered it at sleepovers. And after so long after not calling that night back to tell others, it became far enough away that I'd nearly forgotten about it. It wasn't until like 16 years old that I'd thought about it again. Ma had finally agreed to move into assisted living and put her home of about 60 years on the market, and I had to come up north to help Grandma and Mum clean everything out while Ma settled in place where, much to our relief, she would never be alone like she was since 1989. Something about rummaging through an old basement, curling newspapers nestled into the corners of brick pool tables, inspired such a nostalgia within my mother that she got talking about the times that she was my age. My age then happened to be the same approximate time within my mother's life that she'd seen her grandma go a widow and herself lose something that she admitted with a little pull in her voice that she cared about very much. He was a photographer from a local paper. Good one too. Almost won the Pulitzer for capturing the terror of the Mad River. Mum likes photography. Mum is like her grandfather. And he had a whole life before the bad time, something wholly different than what I'd seen. I don't really know if I believe in God or monsters or a world past this, but I'm sure we leave an imprint, an electrical little pulse that grabs hold of everyone and everything around and tells it, damn it, we were once. But it really doesn't matter how he lived. The man with the camera, searing the history of Dayton in the fearless bald Beatles here today, mayor elected, man captured, marching only forward, always forward, to an elderly, choked death. The man who captured everything forever, his own true history lost. It went so quickly, she said to his box of negatives on the broken wicker chair in the corner. At the point he was at, the doctors just sent him home. He had a big, loud breathing machine to keep him comfortable, but that was it. We were all there. Grandma had left the room for a few moments, and that was when he went. And do you really want to know where? Do you really? Really want to? Because I think you already do.